Welcome to the Garage Network podcast. Join us and the occasional special guest as we discuss everything automotive, from fixing cars as a technician, owning an automotive workshop or business, overall work-life balance, and even the occasional laugh. In this episode of TGN Torques, we were joined by Wayne Bryant. Wayne is the CEO of the Automotive division of GPC Asia Pacific. We talk about his early career path as a jockey, all the way through to being a delivery driver for Repco, and now being the CEO of GPC Asia Pacific. We hope that you guys enjoy this.
Yeah. Get around
you can come up. Short drive us in you, mate. It's okay. We've got our Christmas party next month. You can come up.
There you go.
There you
free
go.
Drinks. It's free drinks for Garage Network members and Wayne Bryant.
There you go. And
All right, we're gonna kick this off and have a bit of a chat.
You go for it, mate. How we start with an intro? Go on, you can, Mike. You do it.
Give me 2 seconds. I've got to get another beer.
Go.
Hang on.
Got to get the important stuff
Oh,
organised.
it's all about you. Can't get too far into it without the beer, of course not.
Notice he doesn't. He likes Corona.
He does. He's very picky. He's a picky beer drinker.
It's just Corona with no fruit, mate. That's all I am.
How about it? When we did the AAA in Melbourne, because they had only served certain beers, but I made sure that before we, after Spectral leave, we've got to look. He only drinks Coronas, so he's like, yeah, but we don't have Corona. That's fine. Work it out. He only drinks Coronas. Everyone else can have whatever, but she worked it out. Yeah, Coronas.
That was at the QT.
Yeah, she worked it out.
Yeah, no, she was good. Yeah. Go on, Costa. You doing the intro or my TGN Tech on?
Look, doesn't have to be that official, mate. So we can be straight into it and say, we are graced with Your Holiness, Wayne Bryant, the CEO of GPC. How are you, mate?
Oh, I think you just need to ease up a little bit on all
Did
of
you
that.
like that? Mate, don't ask me to do an intro. I'll do it justice. I will do it justice.
Oh, why don't I do it? I'm just. I can't even do it.
Welcome to TGN Tech Talks. We are graced with the presence of the GPC CEO, General Manager, Wayne Bryant. What is your title, Wayne?
Officer.
You just about had it right, mate. You can leave out all the graced bit if you don't mind.
No, come on.
No,
we'll leave that in. This will just be there.
We're leaving that, leaving the wholeness, leaving the whole jazz. It's all staying in.
Hang on, is it General Manager, Wayne? What's your title?
CEO of the Automotive division within GPC Asia Pacific.
There we go.
How many divisions are in GPC? There's my first question for you.
Oh, there you go. So there's in Australia and across the Asia Pacific region, there's two divisions. There's an Automotive division, which is made up of Repco, Napa, Rare Spares, four-wheel drive 24/7, number of other brands as well. And then in the Industrial division, we actually brand that division Motion Industries Asia Pacific, and it's made up of brands that you'll all know, which is CBC's, Bearing Service, Hardy Supply, so those sorts of brands. But those brands used to be really strong automotive brands years ago, but these days they service more of the industrial, commercial, manufacturing sector. So my patch is all automotive, and the other part of the business is industrial, and there's a CEO for the industrial business as well.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. So it's a lot of companies.
It is a big company. Yeah. 6,500, 7,000 employees across Australia and New Zealand, and also the industrial business has a presence up in Indonesia as well. So it's a bigger organisation than people probably sometimes realise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I forget that the CBC bearings used to be massive. They were everywhere. There was one at Leichhardt. We used to buy bearings off them all the time. We're certainly not buying bearings the way we used to be buying bearings. Going back 30 years, showing my age in the industry.
Yeah, it is different, right? I can remember my early days at Repco. You'd get your Set A and Set B and Set D bearings and all that sort of stuff from CBC and Bearing Service, and make up a kit, go down there and match a seal and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But their business is much more heavy-duty, industrial, commercial sort of stuff these days.
Yeah, right.
So you're saying back then you used to make kits. So how far long ago was that? So where was your journey with GPC? Was it sort of Been there for a while, I'm going to assume.
Yeah, 33 years. So I started out at Repco in Toowoomba, and I got employed. My first job with Repco was a delivery driver.
Yeah, right.
So, and that was when I couldn't tell you the difference between a split pin and a ball joint. So I actually got thrown into my first job at Repco. Before they'd even let me loose as a delivery driver, I got put into the stock receivable area. So unpack stock every day and put it on the shelf. And by unpacking it and putting it on the shelf, you learnt all the part number sequencing. I soon worked out what the difference between a split pin and a ball joint, because you unpacked them and looked at them and learnt the product. So that's when I started Costa back in December 1989, unpacking stock. Did that for a few weeks, and then they let me into a delivery vehicle to go and deliver product to customers.
That's actually really smart, because did you pick the parts at that point, Wayne? So
that was part of the induction process. Go and learn from one of the old knowledgeable guys in the branch who was an inventory controller, effectively. He knew where everything belonged on the shelf. He'd walk around and check the stock outs, and he'd override the system if you need to top up stock. So you get to learn the inventory system in the store, the part numbering sequence, the location in the store, where everything goes in the store. It was all... Everything had a home. It had to be put away in exactly the right place, in the right part number sequencing. So when you got the call or you're on the service counter and you had to walk to the shelf, you actually learn what part of the store to walk to and where to find the part.
Yeah, that's right.
And with picking, you're right. So there'd be times as a delivery driver back in the day, then most of the parts would be ready for you in the delivery branch, and you pick up the invoice and the manifest and off you go. But there were times when they're busy and you'd need to go and pick the parts. So you need to be able to find your way around the branch quickly and efficiently to find the parts and get away in the delivery vehicle. So it was good induction process, really.
Yeah, right.
Well,
I think it's a good process for just you know where everything is, like our apprentices putting tools away, and I also, I mean, I relate that now with some of our apprentices with muscle memory of going, listen, if you move stuff before you mop the floor, you got to put it back in the same place, and if you take stuff off a shelf to wipe it down, you got to put it back in the same place. And someone will think, why am I doing this? Why are you so particular, Mike, about putting that back in the same place? And it's like, well, when you move on from this into the trade, if you can't do that at a simple level, on a Friday afternoon when we're mopping the floor, or during the week when I ask you to clean a shelf, you need to be able to do that for your entire trade. You need to be able to take stuff off a car and remember exactly where it goes back to. And it's really, really important that you get that from an early stage. And I believe it's a little bit of a, wax on, wax off. You're doing this stupid job that these kids think is stupid, but you go, oh no, this is why we're doing it, and this is the reason we're doing it. And it's because you need to be able to put stuff back in exactly the same place. We don't want bolts left over at the end of the job.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was the same for me. Eventually I went in to be in the phone room, and the first thing you got taught was, right, well, back in the day we had a computer by this stage in Repco, but all the pricing was done out of price sheets. So you get taught how to look up a customer, look up your business, find the discount that you should be getting for a part, following that, and the reason why that was important, because it needed to be consistent each time you sold a part. Yeah, right. And then also taking an order, like you'd call up, everything was over the phone back then. You'd call up, write down the vehicle, make, model, series, write down the parts that they're being asked for. If you didn't know the part number, at least you had the description. And then you'd go away and find the part numbers and write them all on an order sheet. We had a little order sheet, little square order sheet. Same document for every single order. Everything got written down. And even when we completed the sale, we put a line through it with the invoice number on it, and we put on a spike. And we kept every single one of those order sheets, so that if you call back 2 hours later or 2 days later and said, hey, you were talking to Wayne and you ordered a set of, touring gas shock absorbers for an XE Falcon, they could go back and check that I'd taken the order that way, and if I'd supplied the wrong parts, that I'd looked up the wrong parts, then someone could have a coaching conversation with me to say, it's evident that Mike asked you for front XE Falcon shocks, but he wanted touring gas, and you sent out GT gas shocks, if you can remember those times.
Yeah. I remember having the manuals and looking stuff up. Like, Costa, you're 10 years younger than me, or you probably than Wayne and I. So I've got all these books, and we used to keep the old ones because things would drop out of the book as nether editions would come on, especially Repco or Bosch, especially the Bosch books. old points would drop out of some of the older cars. You'd only get new model cars coming out in the new books, and you'd keep some of the old ones. So, it takes me back to think, geez, yeah, we were doing a lot of such a manual process, wasn't it? Like computers have changed their life.
It is a little different to what we got today, where a lot of parts interpreters, particularly new ones that come into our business and every other business, they rely on the electronic catalogue to be spot on, and I can understand that because that's the environment they're coming into. But we were taught how to read a catalogue, and if a new Munro catalogue came out or a new Bendix catalogue came out, the first thing you do is read the front and back parts of the book, because that's where all the really valuable information was. And you actually as you were reading that book, you're actually being trained in a sense. And it was a different time, different today. We've got to deal with it differently through other means of training now. But it was what you said, Mike. It's about following a process, and whether you're cleaning a workshop or undertaking a job or looking up parts, it's all about that process over and over and over again. You just become really efficient and quick at it. Yeah.
That's what the process is built.
That's 33 years ago.
Yeah, so you started when you were 10 years old, obviously.
I was a little bit older than that. Maybe the screen's been generous to me. I was 20 actually when I started, so I'm 53 now. Yeah.
Excellent. So it went from the drive, so it really started right at the grassroots, right? Then made your way to phones. How did you go all the way to now? Obviously, you see, that's a big. I'm not going to say a leap, because obviously you took a fair bit of time, but that's quite a bit of progression.
There's a lot of progression, and I'm really lucky, guys, to have worked for some terrific managers and leaders who spotted me and helped me and promoted me and gave me lots of opportunity. But I actually have had 18 different roles in the company. Lived in 6 different cities across 3 different states. So what happened was, Costa, I got in on the phone desk, as I said to you, and I was only doing that about 9 months, and I was in Toowoomba. So if anyone knows, Toowoomba's up in the Darling Downs. There's a little town 4 hours west of Toowoomba called Roma, and there was a new branch opening up in Roma, and there was a sales rep's role going, and I'd come from a different background. I was a professional jockey before I worked at Repco, and I was pretty successful, and I was earning a really good amount of money as an 18, 19-year-old kid as a jockey. And when I started as a delivery driver, that was a fair pay cut, but I needed to start again. And I'd promised myself that I'd have a crack at any opportunity that came my way if it helped me get my career moving, if it was good for my family. And so I put my hand up for a rep's job that no one else really wanted to take. They'd been advertising this role. It was out in the country. A lot of the city guys didn't want to go out there. So I went out there, and I still barely knew the difference. I literally was pretty green as a parts guy, and I certainly didn't know anything about selling. But I went out there to be a rep, and all I had to sell was really not my knowledge, because I didn't have parts knowledge, but my honesty with people to say, I actually probably I'm not that experienced. I'm quite green. But if you ask me for something, I'll find a way to get you the answer, whether I've got it or not got it. If we haven't got it, I'll point you in the direction of someone that has, and I'll always get back to you. So all I had to sell really was a service. And I did that for 2 years and had a lot of success. Customers really liked that honesty, and no bullshit. If I didn't know the answer, I would find the answer. I couldn't find the answer, I'd tell them that. And that worked out pretty well for me, and it's probably served me well all the way. But I went through lots of roles, Costa. After a while, I became the 2IC in the branch, then the branch manager. We had a great time in Roma when I was a branch manager. Met my wife out there at a pub one Friday night and ended up marrying her 4 years later. And then we moved to Rocky, and I ran the Repco Rocky branch, Rockhampton, Central Queensland.
Yep.
Went from a 5-person branch in Roma to a 12 or 13-person branch in Rockhampton with a full engine reconditioning workshop on it.
That's right. That's right. You guys used to reco engines. I remember that now, actually. Yeah.
So my second branch I ran had a fully equipped engine reconditioning branch, and I was responsible for that engine reconditioning branch. So here's this ex-jockey in Rockhampton running a workshop, guys. So I didn't know anything about engineering terribly much, but again, I learnt by getting out in the shop of a night time, stripping down heads, putting them in the tank, cleaning them down, not doing any surface grinding or balancing or anything, no valve regrind work, anything like that, but just helping the guys with the disassembly. And then if it was a valve regrind, I might have got on and helped them assemble them again, you know, at least get them ready for the guys to come along with the valve spring compressors and do everything up. So,
Yeah, cool.
So I learnt a bit of that after hours, which was awesome. And then there's lots of roles. I actually went through, became a regional manager, then I was the sales manager for Queensland, packed up and moved to Melbourne, looked after major accounts like all your Goodyears and Tyre Powers and Bridgestones and Kmart Tire and Auto, all those sort of things. Then I went to Perth, packed up my family and moved to Perth, and I was a WA SA state manager. Did that for 3 years, then came back around Victoria, and then after that moved into national office. And I've had lots of different roles in trade and in retail and store operations and lots of different roles over that 30 years. I said like 18 different job titles in 33 years.
Wow. Have you still got all your business cards? You got each one?
You know, I didn't. I was just thinking about that. I watched a guy. There was a guy in America who I know retired just recently, and on LinkedIn he had all of his cards, and I thought, bugger.
Well, I did that for a mate of mine. Mate of mine did that. He worked for Citibank and he worked for ASIC, and every time I saw him, he gave me a card, and he's high up now in Citibank. And every time I see him, I said, "Oh, look!" I said, he came over the other day, and I said, "I've still got them here. They're in a folder." And I got when you worked at ASIC and he's a lawyer, and all these different jobs. And he goes, "Oh my God, you've still got?" I said, "Well, I've got them. If you ever want them, they're there." So,
yeah.
But that's I think that's a testament as well to Repco as a brand, as a company, for you to be able to do that, because people can look up to that and go, well, you can start as a driver and end up as a CEO. That's a pretty amazing feat.
Well, I think recently we were speaking to a few guys that are in some amazing companies, and the trend is very funny because you see it. They're all long-termers. The guys are there for a very long time. That's when you sort of get the vibe that's going to be quite a good company.
Yeah, and look, I think that's right. You know, you've got to like the people you work with.
Yeah.
You've got to enjoy serving the customer that you serve. So even though he's this old ex-jockey turned up in a spare parts business, I actually like dealing with people, right? And what I found is a lot of my customers in each of the towns I lived in and things I did actually became very good friends.
100%.
More than just selling them a part, or we actually became mates. We'd have a beer after work on a Friday night, or we'd go to the beach with the kids on the weekend, or whatever, race saloon cars when I was out in Roma with customers, things like that. So you build up a lot of friendships, and then it becomes stickier than just a job. It's 100%. Actually part of your life, you know, and it's like what you guys are with the Garage Network. You've got this whole network of people that are like-minded and you get on well. So I've been able to do that. But I guess the difference for me was I'd sort of had a mindset that I was prepared to move around. If I needed to move around, I'd move around to pursue the opportunity. So that's not for everyone, right? Like some people have a deep, big families. They don't want to move away from their family, and that's fine too. But part of my ability to get promoted and moved around was my preparedness to up and move, to take an opportunity. Yeah.
The flexibility, that can be hard for some people. That flexibility can be very difficult for some people, I can imagine.
Yeah, and so in 2000, I moved from Brisbane to Melbourne, and in my contract, I had it agreed that I'd go back to Brisbane in 3 years, which was unusual, but I really wanted to move back to Brizzy. But that was before I got to Melbourne and realised everything Melbourne had to offer.
There's some delicious food in Melbourne,
And then we moved to Melbourne, and 11 months later, just bought a house, just paid the deposit, just about to move in. And the CEO or the MD at the time said, "Hey, I'd love you to go to Perth." And my first answer was no. And then he came back a few weeks later and said, No, we'd really like you to go to Perth. So I plucked up the courage, told my wife that we were going to move to Perth right when we bought a house. But again, all those twists and turns, right? If I hadn't have said yes to that opportunity, who knows whether the next one would come, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. I look back and say, well, if I'd have lived if I'd have stayed in Toowoomba or Brisbane, would I have had more family and friends around me? Well, of course I would have, because you stay in one place. But then I wouldn't have got the chance to live in Perth or live in Melbourne or experience different things. So there's other things that are really great about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you have, for someone starting off right now, and if any young techs out there listening to this, or even non-techs, whatever they are listening to this, any word of advice? 18-year-old you?
Yeah, so I go back to what my philosophy was I'm going to go after each and every opportunity that comes my way if I think it's actually going to be a good thing that's going to help me progress and is going to be good for my family in time. Now, I started that dialogue in my own head before I had a family, but we all know that, if you want to, it depends on what motivates you in life, right? I didn't never have any desire to be super wealthy and I'm still not super wealthy, I can give you the tip, but if you want to live a comfortable lifestyle and do well in life, it's not going to happen by accident. You've got to have a red hot crack. You've got to have a go. You can't die wondering, right? So we've only got one shot at this, and most of us have to work hard for what we get. It's the odd one gets lucky, but most of us have to put in. Yeah.
That's
and
right.
my way of putting in was to say, well, if I want a bigger job, better job one day, I'm going to have to sacrifice something, and maybe that is that I have to move around.
Yeah.
And you know what's good about it? It was bloody hard. The first move and the second move are hard work, because you go to a town, you don't know anyone. But in this trade, it's really easy to get to know people, because you can talk to the guy down the road in the mechanic shop, or you can go to as a parts shop, and you can get to know each other. We're all got similar interests, so it's easy that way.
That's right.
And I got no regrets. I've actually got friends all around Australia. So, I don't need them all in the one place. There's friends dotted around all over the country. And so no regrets at all. If it were me at 18, I'd do it all again. I'd go again and go as hard as I could. Yeah.
I was going to say something you said before, Wayne, which is really, really important. You've got to enjoy what you do, because you work more hours of anything else than your life. You work more hours than you sleep. So if you don't enjoy what you're doing, and at the end of the day, it's not what you earn, it's how you spend it.
Yeah.
I've got some I've got some mates who are earning stupid amounts of money overseas. And I said to one of them, I said, he's on $500,000 a year. And I went, well, what's changed? And he goes, well, instead of buying that bottle of wine, I now buy a bottle of wine that's worth X amount of dollars, because that's what's expected of me in Singapore with the other expats that we're with. And he said, normally I actually personally prefer drinking the cheaper bottle of wine than the $300 or $400 bottle of wine. But all that changes is expectation and what you spend.
Yeah.
And yes, he's trying to save some money, but you can sit there and go, with greater pay comes greater expectation. I think that's what happens in a working world. But I think you've got to enjoy what you do.
Well, that's exactly right. I think that's the most important thing. And then the other thing you need if you've got a partner, your partner and yourself have to be really well aligned. Because if you've got a partner who's, there is sacrifices, right? Let's just face it. Whether you own your own business or you're in a senior role, there are demands and requirements of those roles, and it does require you to do more than what you might need to do if you're in a 38-hour-a-week job, and you might have to move around, you have to be away traveling. Well, your partner needs to be up for that as well. So, and if that's not the case, then you need to rethink, is that the right thing to do by my family? And if it's not, then, like you said, you might earn a bit less and whatnot, but you adjust to that, right? Your lifestyle adjusts accordingly.
So I've got a couple of questions. Wayne, Wayne is taller than me, Costa. How many races did you win? As a jockey?
About 160.
Really? Oh wow!
I was a leading, not the leading, but a leading apprentice in Brisbane for 2 or 3 years. And rode in Sydney and Perth, and got to come to Sydney, to your hometown, Mike, and Costa, for Group 1 races in the Spring Carnival. So I was second leading apprentice in Brisbane in 1988 and 1989. And Chris, anyone who watches the race has a punt. Chris Muntz was the leading apprentice and beat me by 3 in the Queensland Premiership. And Glenn Boss, who everyone would know from Mackay D fame. He ran third. He was a bit behind me in third. So I won't blow my smoke out of my own backside too much, but I was a pretty handy jockey. I could have gone all the way if I hadn't got too heavy.
Well, Wayne, did you know that was one of Mike's dreams to become a jockey? He just couldn't make that. He couldn't make the height restriction. It was a bit still too short.
He liked growing it too much.
Yeah.
Weight restriction would have got me, mate.
Yeah.
It's okay.
What happened to me, guys, is I was 15 and I was very light. So you use a little fall off your trolley when I tell you. So I was 38 kilos when I was 15.
Yeah,
Wow.
And I was a late maturer. So the people like Glenn Boss, who was taller than me, he didn't basically grow. From when he was 15 to 18, he hardly grew. So he was pretty well matured when he was 15, 16. And I was a late maturer. So I was still growing when I was 19 and 20. When I gave away riding, I still grew taller.
Yeah, wow.
It's pretty dangerous, though, isn't it?
I was lucky that I got a few years out of it, which is something I love doing. But I got some years out of it before I got too heavy. And then it got to the point where I couldn't keep the weight off. I couldn't starve myself enough to ride at the weights that I needed to ride at and be fit and healthy. So I had to just give it up. I would have killed myself.
But it's pretty. Oh yeah, it's pretty dangerous too, I suppose. And it's a dangerous sport. It's not exactly.
It is dangerous. It is dangerous, and you. But I would. I mean, I haven't done the statistics on this, but we're probably higher risk of having a car accident going home tonight than we were on the track. I mean, you're riding with professionals. They know what they're doing. The only problem is when it does get messy and there is an accident, it can be pretty dangerous because you're going at a high speed and you don't have a seatbelt to keep you in place. You're gone.
That's right.
So did you grow up with horses? Did you grow up on a farm? You grew up on a farm. So okay. So that's where that comes from.
Not on a farm, but my dad's a horse trainer and my grandfather and great grandfather were jockeys as well. So it sort of goes through the whole family.
Yeah,
so
right.
I was riding racehorses before I could walk, and that's the truth. They had me on the back of a horse before I could walk, and I just rode horses all my life, and that was my thing. Like someone else rides a motorbike or someone else runs and plays footy, horses was my thing.
And what made you think, all right, I'm going to go to cars? Because I mean, horse racing to car parts, it's quite a bit of a change, right? So did you like cars?
Because I hate to say it happened in 1900. We went from the horse and cart to a car.
Oh, yeah, cars were invented. Is that what happened?
No, it's a good question. So my uncle actually ran an engine reconditioning shop, a successful one in Warwick in Queensland, Windle's Engine Reconditioning, and it's still there today, although he's retiring. And I did a bit of work experience with him. I sort of tossed around the idea that whether I'd go and work with him or someone in that trade, because I didn't know, guys. I went through year 12, but in my year 10 and year 11 and 12 period, I was always thinking about the form guide and racehorses and not about work. But I had my year 12 certificate, and then as luck would have it, and this is a true story, so the guy who was running Repco Queensland had gone to school with my dad. They'd reacquainted after many, many years. My father must have been telling him one day about the fact that I needed to stop what I was doing and start somewhere else. And he said, oh, well, look, I can't guarantee you anything and I'm not going to get overly involved, but I'll let the guys in Toowoomba and Warwick know that Wayne might be looking for a job. And if a job comes up, maybe you can get an interview. And I got an interview. I didn't get the first job, which was in Warwick. And the second job came along in Toowoomba some months later and they gave me a call and said, do you want to come in for an interview? And I basically said to the guy that was running the branch, who was a guy called Leo Cam, was a bit of a legend. I said to Cammy at the time, look, I don't know anything about cars. I just, again, didn't try to bullshit him or make up stories. I just basically said, I don't know anything about cars, but I need a new start. I've been really successful at what I've done, and I'm determined to be successful at whatever I do next. And I promise you I'll give it a red hot crack and I'll learn as much as I can, as quick as I can. And he said that he'd give me a shot. And I went on to probation and I worked there. And eventually, within a few months, they went from having me in the delivery driver's role to being on the phones, taking orders from the trade.
Yeah, cool.
Something to be said about being brutally honest, to be like, there really is.
Well,
I think there's no other way.
Well, and determined. I think you need that drive. You need to go, look, I'm going to give it. And you just summed it up perfectly there, Wayne. I reckon that was absolutely brilliant. That you go, I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to give it my all, and that's what you've got to give everything in life, and especially your work. And there's no point giving, what I call a half-assed effort to do something. You got to give it your all, and you got to go. I'm not just going to be. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to be the best at what I can do in this. And that's the only way you're going to ever grow within a company. Everyone's going to see that you're going to be the best at doing that. So I do have a question. So after the 30 years, I've been in the trade for 30 years. You've been 33. Where do you think we're going? What are your thoughts on EV, especially after I know the travel you've done earlier this year? You've been over to your GPC show. Did you go to SEMA? Have you just been to SEMA?
No, I didn't go to SEMA, but I went to Europe in July and did a study tour through Europe with GPC. Then I went to the Napa Expo in July, the week after. And then I went back to Automechanica in August. So I did 2 laps in 8 weeks, which I wouldn't recommend to everyone. But that was good, Michael. It was really, really eye-opening to see what's happening elsewhere. I haven't been to Norway, but I know plenty of people that have now. So it's interesting what you see and learn over there. So maybe I'll just even talk about Norway for a minute, because I was talking to Jeff Quillam, who runs the VACC, the other day.
Yeah, we interviewed Jeff. We've done one of these with Jeff, actually, because the VACC is one of
the story as well. So I won't try to quote the numbers because I'll get it wrong. But he talks about the growth of the EV car park in Norway, but that's been underpinned by huge amounts of investment by the government. Like, they've poured money into infrastructure and incentivising the public to buy cars, but a lot of those car owners have held on to their ICE vehicle as well. So they've got an electric vehicle and an ICE vehicle. And one of the interesting things out of that has been that the average age of the internal combustion engine vehicle over there is getting older. So they're hanging on to them, and they're hanging on to them for a lot longer. So we all know that that's actually good for the aftermarket. So, and despite the number of new cars sold, despite the number of new cars sold over there, and they started that journey like 10 or 12 years ago, it's still only a little over half the car park. So there's still a big ICE car park, and the cars are all getting older. So that's one thing that was interesting. The other thing I'd say is, I think one of the interesting reports to read is ACA did a report for the AAA last year, which you're aware of, Mike, and they did a projection on what they think the mix of new car sales might be, and EV new car sales might be as a proportion of all cars sold between now and I think it goes all the way to 2050, right? But if you look at 2030, which isn't that far away, even if we get to 50% of all cars sold being EV, that's only going to make up 4 or 5% of our total car park by 2030. You have to get all the way out to 2040 or 45. I think it's 2045 before it tips to where half the car park is EV, right? So that still means that by 2045, there's still something like, and with car park growth, the number will be higher than what I'm about to say, but there's still going to be 7 million cars or so out there running around in circulation, which are ICE vehicles. Yeah. So, and it's anything like Norway, people will hang on to those cars longer because they're the second car and they won't need to replace them as often. So I actually think it's beyond the three of us sitting on this call, we'll have to make choices now around what we do and don't do to prepare our business. But we'd have to see a really aggressive ramp up that's different to what we're seeing in all the modelling now for it to have a huge impact on our business by 2035, 2040. I think the runway is longer than what people in the press make out at times. But the only thing I would say, the caveat that is, I guess none of us really know categorically, and it'll depend a lot on government and infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a hard topic and a hot topic to talk about for us, and we've got to be careful what you say. But I mean, the hypocrisy that's going on at the moment, where we've got a government that's saying get into EV Yet we've also got a government saying prepare yourself for next year for electricity prices to raise by 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
And you just sort of go, well, what no one has done, and what we probably should do at some point, is go, 1 litre of petrol gives you X amount of kilowatt hour, and it does this amount of CO2 to the environment. 1 kilowatt hour of non-solar and non-green energy gives you X amount per kilowatt hour and this much pollution to the environment, so that we can actually get I think at some point, like I think we've spoken about this in the AAA perspective, but we've spoken about this balance of the pendulum right now is everything's got to be green, everything's got to be, we can't even have a sensible conversation. I just don't, because if you have any sort of other conversation, you're a denialist, we're not really able to talk about it, especially in the mainstream media or in any way, shape or form where anyone can hear you. And I believe that we're not doing great things for the environment. Like, I mean, I try to live by our sustainability of our business, and everything we do, everything I've done in my 30 years has been about emissions. Every training course I've done is about emissions. And when I took over the business, it's a no-brainer for me to go, well, I'm going to focus on my emissions and and the amount of waste that we produce and how much can we recycle and how can we make things better emission-wise just for this business. And there's a lot of other things that I look outward after looking inward at what I do, and look outward at other businesses like the air industry, the planes, and lots and lots of other industries which are just not focused on it whatsoever. But we seem to always be the scapegoat. Yeah. So you got to be really, really careful with what we say. But I think at some point we need to, if we do the kilowatt hour conversion, I think you'll find that petrol is on a new ICE vehicle is doing far less for the environment than actually an EV where we're burning brown coal. Perhaps if we had nuclear in Australia, it might be a better conversation. But I mean, I also, Costa, we might have to edit that out if this goes onto YouTube.
No, it'll be all right, bro. We've had this discussion before anyways. And
I mean, I think it's just really, it's not a great, it's just something that we just need to be aware of. And I think it's at some point we need to have a sensible conversation about it, because I feel like it's overly hyped.
Yeah. Look, I think, and so we'll continue to learn, right? This is not flick the switch and we've all got to adapt to EV overnight. There's a learning journey for the whole industry to go on. And I think we're all going to learn a lot more about EV and other alternate powertrain options as well. It's not the only option.
There's fuel cell, there's alternative fuel. We discussed this over the weekend with the EV training. There is so much, mate, in 10 years' time, there might be a different option.
Well, there's
honestly, we don't know.
There's a synthetic fuel being developed, and I just go, if we get to the price point, that's what makes me say, if we got to the price point looking at kilowatt hour, how much would fuel have to bet to for a kilowatt hour? It might be $5 a litre to get to the same price as whatever our electricity price might be next year. At $5 per kilowatt hour, we can make a full synthetic fuel.
Yeah. The benefit we'll have here, guys, is the rest of the world is, not the rest of the world, parts of the world are moving through this quicker than we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So what we've got the benefit of, and we were only talking about this at our conference last week to our team, is, I'm fortunate to work for a company that's got a footprint all around the world. Yeah, so we can actually get to learn from Europe and Canada specifically. Those markets are a bit more advanced than other parts of the world. We can see how they're helping prepare workshops with the right training, the right equipment, what types of equipment you should invest in earlier rather than later. All manner of things, how to market your business, get yourself ready and start to market your business to the audience, so you're educating them before it becomes mainstream that you are able to service that vehicle.
100%.
Just like, Michael, you've heard me say it before, it's not that many years ago. If I think about when I first started at Repco and then even into the late 90s and early 2000s, most of our workshops would say, do you want a grease and oil change? We'd sell a major service or a minor service, right? And then, again, I'll give Repco a little bit of credit. We actually put together an auto service quoting program and said, well, why don't you market a logbook service? Because that helps keep the customer's car in warranty. And then we went on this whole industry movement of educating the customers that we could do a logbook service, not void their warranty. That didn't just happen overnight. That took many years to change the market. Well, we're just at the start of another change now. It was just, we've got to start preparing our businesses and our techs to be able to work on an EV car and not a, internally combusted engine, as an example. And there is still things to fix. They wear out rotors, they're heavier, they wear out tyres, they still need filtration, believe it or not, they still got filtration in them. It's still got a cabin air filter. There's hydraulics in these things as well. There's cooling components in them. There's hose systems in them. There's some sophisticated product in these things. They're not quick to fix, and the parts cost more. Yeah. So the way you make money as a repairer and service your customers will change, but there's still things that have to be repaired on that vehicle. And the OE dealers won't be able to cope with all the volume. There's not enough of them out there to service all of the market. So there'll always be an aftermarket. It just means that the businesses that prepare for it and are ready, geared up and investing in the right equipment and training are the ones that'll be ready to service that market, and maybe the ones that put their heads in the sand and say, well, worry about that when it becomes that. They're the ones that might get caught out because it might be too little too late.
Well, this does come up often on our network, and people are stressing out about, the guy down the road's charging X amount and he's so cheap. And so, guys,
don't worry about it.
This is our time where we're going to make as much money as I believe. There's going to probably the next 10, 15 years is going to be where a lot of those shops that haven't invested back in their business, back in their education, back in their product understanding, which is cars for us, back in those sort of aspects, they're going to disappear. Yeah. They're going to go.
Yeah. Well, you always got to be competitive from a price point perspective, right? You've got to be in the game, but we all know that you don't have to be the cheapest. It's the quality of service you provide. It's
value you add,
service you provide, make the customer feel good, give them a quality job so the job doesn't come back and inconvenience them. And you do that by having the right gear, the right equipment, the right techs on the job.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get any of that for free. So you've got to charge appropriately for that service, right?
And if you don't have the team, and if you don't have the knowledge, and you don't have all this stuff, well, then you become obsolete.
And then
what's going to happen.
All you've got short term is a price point advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that price point's not going to. Won't carry you across the line. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get. You can't get any better.
All right, Wayne. So it's 2022. What is Wayne's next move? So this is a long-term game. You're staying there for the next 10, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years?
Moving to America to be the head of GPC.
No.
Finally sticking to that contract and moving back to Brizzy?
No. I think that contract expired a while back.
Okay.
I'm really happy, guys, doing what I'm doing. I'm running a big business. I've got a great team around me. We've got a good runway ahead of us, and I'm just 1,000% engaged in what I'm doing. And my family's got their roots down in Melbourne. I want to, get my kids through school. I want to continue to work with the AAA, Mike, as you know, which we both really enjoy, and that's a way of giving something back, contributing for the greater good for the industry, whilst I'm also, working for GPC. So, I don't think you'll see me moving anywhere anytime soon at all, Costa. I'm a keeper, mate. Well, I hope I'm a keeper.
Well, you might not have the choice. No, joking. What about for GPC? What's there? Do they have a bit of a long vision? Obviously a lot of change on the horizon. Is there a bit of a plan ahead of?
Oh, absolutely. So we always work with sort of a 4 to 5 year view out. And we take a long range view to what's coming. So a lot of companies work 1 to 3 years out. We try to work 5 years out. And so we've got a strategic plan written for the next 5 years. We've got a clear roadmap of what we want to achieve in that time, which does include, a whole piece around, Repco's just turned 100. And so we want Repco and Napa to be here for the next 100 years. So we're starting to talk in that kind of language, right? How do we thrive for another 100 years? And what's required to thrive for another 100 years is a whole sustainability theme. So whether it's sustainable environmentally, so all the things you talk about, Mike, around emissions and those sorts of things, but sustainability also includes giving back to the community. So what are we doing through our foundation? How are we giving back? How are we supporting the communities we live in? You got to have an environment that people want to stay with. So that's a retention of your people, but you've got to attract people, and as a new generation. So we've got a whole piece around that. And then we've also got, what businesses are we going to acquire? Well, they need to be businesses that are going to stand the test of time for 20, 30, 40 years, not just another parts shop down the road. We need to buy things that can position the company for growth. And then finally is this whole piece around leaning into future technology and EV. So, and doing things at the right pace to keep in the, you don't want to go bet the farm on EV right now. It's going to be a long burn. So what are the things you're going to choose to do now versus 5 years time or 10 years time? So yeah, the short answer is we've got a long range plan, and we're really confident in that plan. I think the aftermarket is a great market, and we should all be thankful for being in it, because it's a good environment. It can weather the storm of a financial downturn. We've been through a pandemic, and I don't know what else the world could throw at us. We went through that, and we've all come out the other side, and the aftermarket's in really good shape. We just got to start to gradually get prepared for that next evolution.
For the next change. But that's in a lot of industries, and it's all over the place. And I think everyone's got to. If you were growing peaches 30 years ago that went into a can for SPC, you didn't plant new trees in the last 30 years, you'd be going broke today. Because who eats peaches out of a can? The generation today does not. So.
This is a bigger change by comparison, but remember in the mid-'80s when the EFI vehicle come along, and there was God, like bloody hell. But everyone got through that just fine. We just had to learn some new skills and buy some new equipment and adapt. And 100%. This is a lot more significant than the Carby to EFI change. But I think like you said earlier, Costa, the good businesses will invest wisely and they'll adapt, and we plan to do the same.
Yeah, perfect. That's look, I love to hear that, because the biggest thing that my pet peeve, and Mike always, the ones that we've always done it that way. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. Oh, that bugs me right up.
You can't do that.
You can't do that.
No, you got it. It's always been changing. It's forever changing.
Always reevaluating. Always changing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Adapting. And I think. Sorry, I'm just going to go. The way that our industry and a lot of it, a lot of companies are the same, but the way a lot of us dealt with COVID, to be able to pivot, change, adapt, instantly implement things, make our way through that, and to deal with that as a small business. The fact that we came out the other side of that and went, we're still here, and
our industry did amazing. Our industry did absolutely amazing. It was supportive. It was. We all backed each other. It was. No one knew what we were doing. Yet everyone was trying to help. It was so good.
Everyone's trying to help each other. Some of that seems to have been a little bit forgotten. It just sort of seems to be now. We're all so.
I had suppliers offering support when they didn't have to, because they were going through the same situation we were. We had like the AA. They were so involved in making sure we had all the information we needed, and just hope people don't forget that when everything gets gravy again.
Yeah. I know.
Listen, I think the bigger opportunity for all of us is actually on the employment front, right? So that before EVs would be a problem for anyone, getting some techs attracted into this industry, apprentices, and getting the next generation of technicians ready is our bigger, more immediate opportunity. And we've all got to participate. Every one of us has got to participate. It can't be left to the government or the AAA or the apprentices are asked, or whomever it is. 100%. Everyone's got to lean into that.
I've got to work. What do you call them? Not workers' comp. Work
rehabilitation.
Work experience. No, work experience kid in here at the moment. It's fantastic. It was really good. Spoke to the local school, and I think Adam Pay and Micah are doing some fantastic stuff. Yeah, and we've got his apprenticeship or school based.
Yep.
That school stuff that he's doing. I need to dig deeper in that.
I was about to say, every single one of your workshops in your network and everyone else there, we've got a local high school in our local area, or there's a tech school down the road somewhere, and we should know the principal and we should know the careers person and be saying, hey, who's the young 16 or 17-year-old boy or girl that's coming through school that's a little bit lost, not quite sure, they might not be a fit for uni, but actually has got, good attitude and good work ethic, and let's get them into a trade where one day they could own their own business. Yeah,
absolutely.
And there'll be someone at every school. We're not enough of us not door knocking and talking to people, right?
Yeah, that's 100%.
right. 100%.
And I was talking to some people about this last weekend, and they were talking about the success they're having by doing just that, getting into their local schools and having to talk to them. Yeah. And they actually talked about it being the younger, kids that maybe haven't quite found their groove yet, but are a little bit interested in motor cars or motorbikes, or want to trade but not sure where to choose. Well, rather than leave it to chance, maybe we should be offering them something. But that's the bigger opportunity, Mike. You and I talking about that a lot at the AAA at the moment, but we can't just rely on the industry associations because they can't do it all.
No, and it needs to be done. It needs to be
even
done
at the employment. Even at the employer level, so I've got to have some opportunities to work with some apprentices, and if you hear some of their stories of, the boss always says, don't do this trade, it's crap, it's this, but then their boss owns half of the eastern suburbs of Sydney, doesn't mention that part of it. They built a beautiful family, beautiful life of traveling half the year and all this sort of jazz, but it's a horrible industry to be in, mate. Like, you can't always be that horrible if you're spending half your time overseas. Whatever, you share some of that. You started in their position as an apprentice, and now you are owning multiple businesses, and there is a light in that tunnel. It's just
I think one thing's to build a sustainable environment. Your business to be sustainable environmentally, but I think, Wayne, you just said something which I've never thought of before, which is having a sustainable culture. And that sustainable culture within your business is not about, it's about having people that come to your workshop or that work at your workshop go, I don't want to leave. I don't want to have, I'm not even going to think about leaving because this is the best place I've ever worked and I don't want to go anywhere else. Yeah, and correct. I think sustainability has many facets throughout your whole business, whether it's an environmental sustainable factor, whether it's a sustainable culture that just naturally exudes from your business, not something that has to be forced. Not buying lunch all the time, but just it's a nice place to work, as I said, because you spend most of your life there. And I think that's really, really important.
I was just looking for a photo. I was at a presentation last week, and this particular speaker was talking about how to make people feel really connected with you as a leader inside of your business. I can't find it now, so we won't try and talk about it on this call, but he went through a series of pretty simple things around how you create a really engaged workforce. And if you tick there's 7 things on this list, and if you tick 2 or 3 or 4 of them, it's more likely that employee is going to want to stay with you. But they're really simple ideas, and I wish I could find it down and recite it to you, but I can't, so I'll have to stop. But it's not none of it was rocket science. Treat them well, give them opportunities to learn and stretch their link. You don't just expect them to turn up to work every day and do the same old thing every day. Give them learning experiences, acknowledge them, give them feedback.
100%.
Have their back. If they make a mistake, you got their back, and we'll learn from that. It's just really, really quite simple things. And if you could do a few of those things in combination, like here it was, people want absolutes. They want to know what's expected of them, absolutely. And then they want diversity, though. They don't want to have to do the same old thing every single day. So if you can give them some diversity in what they do, like they say, the variety, what is it? Variety is the spice of life. Their job as well, right? Then if you look after them and give them development opportunities, they're more likely to stay. Make them feel important. Have a connection with them beyond the work environment. Do something with them socially so they feel like they're more connected than a boss and a worker. They've actually got some sort of relationship with you. Trust them. actually trust them to do their job. Let them go, let them do their job, and then serve them. So you, as a servant leader, not a boss that just tells people what to do. And he actually talked about, if you can do 3 or 4 of those things and consistently do them with an employee, they're much, much more likely to stay with you and not be on seek or looking for the next job offer. They're more likely to stay. And with people that you do it, you give them that 7 out of 7 times, they're just never going to leave. They just won't leave you because they're completely fulfilled in their job.
Yeah.
And I thought they were really good, simple things, right? Because that's leadership. If you can do those sorts of things and make people feel engaged. Absolutely. And that's the culture, Mike. That's what, if you do a handful of those things consistently with your team, you're creating a culture that's sustainable and competitive, and you won't maybe suffer the same turnover.
Yeah.
Because lots of people don't do that. They might pay them well, but then the environment isn't great to work in.
Just get out there, send them out in the field.
If I've learned anything, it's money is rarely the reason people leave. You know, like, don't get me wrong, there's always some times, but it's rarely why they're looking for a new job to begin with is a question you have to ask, you know, what's the reason? Yeah.
So I didn't probably do a great job of trying to educate you all on that, but I just wrote that. I took a photo of it because I thought it was a cracking example of things to do.
It was great, Wayne. I feel inspired.
That's good. I feel inspired. I'm gonna ask you, Wayne. Can you email them to me? I want to flick them across and make sure you jump on the Garage Network. Someone's probably going to ask them after watching this. Go, what were those things?
Yeah,
I'll send you a text.
Yeah.
There you go. It's coming to you now.
I don't even know where my phone is. But yeah, it's
right.
Don't forget to join our private Facebook page if you are an automotive technician, and also subscribe to our YouTube and our podcast channel. They are all called The Garage Network. Thanks, guys, and see you next time.